Pregame.com.
Welcome back to Pregame.tv. I am Steve Fezzik here once again with Brian Leonard. And Brian, we get to talk college basketball, Duke, North Carolina. We get to talk about a good game here instead of a crap game.
Who picked this out? Isn't there a minor league game we could be talking about?
Well, it is true that the SMUs of the world and teams like the Old Dominions, it seems like it's easier sometimes to go ahead and spot mispricings on games. But it's good to be able to talk about teams that obviously we watch and we follow. And probably, if you're anything like me, I can't stand either one of these teams.
I was going to point that out. I like to root against both these teams.
But then again, it seems more and more. You watch enough sports. What's interesting, I hear a lot of people, and they have such passion and drive, and they love all these teams. And I've grown to strongly dislike all of them because of various bets that I've lost over my lifetime that I can attribute directly to boneheaded moves on the parts of both teams. But it is a great rivalry here, right down the road from each other. And I've done a lot of research on this, and I was a little bit surprised because I always put Duke's home court advantage, being right there at the very top. And one team that has bucked that home court trend has actually been North Carolina. Let me give you some numbers, and then we can get your thought on this game. Carolina, feel the heel, 6-1. 12-3 against the spread. Their last 15 trips to Duke, and 6-9 straight up. That was kind of shocking to me. It makes me wonder if the geographical being so close and the familiarity of playing there kind of diminishes some of that home court advantage.
Yeah, I've talked about this in the past in other videos. In the non-conference section of the season, your home court advantage is higher because a lot of these teams have never been into that venue before. When you find teams, for example, the Pit, for New Mexico, that's extremely strong, but you have the same teams going in there each and every year, especially if it's a veteran team. It doesn't seem to have that same home court advantage.
Yeah, and look no further than when the season opened with that 24-hour marathon when Davidson, I know you weren't watching that game, but I actually was at 3 in the morning. Davidson got up 10, and at halftime, they threw the kitchen sink at him, and Davidson just wilted down the stretch in New Mexico. I know they got there in the second half. I don't know if they got there for the game, but that was one where I was actually thinking, wow, what a phenomenal home court advantage to have a team out on the West Coast here, with that really late start time and getting a team that's never played in the Pit before. So that certainly made sense. Ryan Kelly is out for Duke, and it really seems like no one's any good this year. Everybody stinks. We're talking about how you throw a blanket over these top 10 teams, and it doesn't seem like any of these teams can really stand losing one of their key starting players. And really, can we expect them to be a legitimate champion? We know the committee will do everything they can to help Duke, keep them at home. Any block charge call that's going to decide the game, it's going to go Coach K's way, as well it should, because I love Coach K. But now I looked at this line. I thought it was going to come like 8.5 or 9. I was kind of shocked by the 11. What were your thoughts about the opening line here?
I thought it was about where it should be. You talked about North Carolina having a lot of success at Duke. This isn't the same North Carolina team. They're not nearly as good as they've been in the past. And I don't know who you're going to pick in this game, but let me throw a couple stats out at you. Take a look at North Carolina on the road this year. Road losses at Miami by 26. I think Miami is one of the 2 best teams in college basketball. At NC State, they lose by 8. At Virginia, they lose by 9. At Indiana, they lose by 34, one of the top 3 teams. At Texas, they lose by 18. They've had one quality win on the road all year long. That was at Florida State. They win that game by 5. They're 1-4 straight up in ATS on the road, losing by 12.4 points per game. This is not the same North Carolina team. And being here in Las Vegas, when the Rebels lost at North Carolina earlier, we go, well, that's a quality loss. I'm not so sure that's a quality loss any longer.
Right, and a lot of people were talking about how North Carolina bounces back, and they thought they would get that bounce when they were playing at Miami, Florida. Turns out they went out down there to hang out on the beach. One thing about this game, the reason I am going to favor North Carolina is that Duke got annihilated in their game at Miami. They came back, won by 20, and I see a similar situation here. I have a top program. The coach absolutely let the players have it after that embarrassing loss to Miami. Here's the very next game, of course, against their arch rival. They're going to be up for this game, both teams regardless, but just a little extra incentive. What I really like about it is I know they got practice rules with all these teams, maximum amount of hours you can spend practicing. We know that's a bunch of bunk when and maybe that applies to like the Evansvilles of the world, but these North Carolina kids and these Duke kids, they practice as much as it's going to take. They'll find a way around it, and I think that that's just going to be the extra incentive. Not to mention Duke playing so bad against Boston College, and I think part of it, Duke had to fly to Boston after that snowstorm, and I wonder if that might have made it a little little more difficult on their travel plans, having to play on Sunday instead of on Saturday. So a couple little intangibles I think that do favor North Carolina.
I'll give you a couple more stats here, but I really appreciate you using Evansville as an example. I had a big play on Evansville a couple days ago and came up a couple points short in overtime, and that was an ugly loss and wrong side loss, but it happens.
Twist the knife.
Yeah, I think you studied that before we came in. But
you're wearing your Purple Aces shirt. If you bet on a team whose mascot is a gambler, you got to expect what you might get.
My high school mascot was a lawyer. Has there ever been a worse mascot than a lawyer? But you talked about Duke. I happen to think Duke's a very good team. Take a look at the only teams they've lost to this year. At Miami, excellent team. At NC State, I watched that game. That was a huge game for NC State. But in those games, the opposition shot 47.4 and 50% from three-point range. That can happen. And when you take a look at how a team loses, you have to see how they lost. And if you're playing a team that's hitting 50% for three-point land, you're not going to win many of those games, especially covering the spread. And Duke's 12-0 straight up at home, 6-6 against the spread, but they are winning by 21.2 points per game. And their closest win in conference at home has been 10 points. I just don't think North Carolina's very good. I know there's a big rivalry here, but I think we might be butting heads in this one.
Very good. Well, I'm going to go ahead and make it official, and even with your warning here.
All right.
So Brian Leonard likes those Dukies. I think it's just a little bit too expensive. I do think they're a fine program, but at 11 points or more, I got to go ahead and take the Tar Heels plus the 11. Really like the fact they got embarrassed so badly against Miami of Florida. I expect a nice bounce back here, and I'm going to go ahead and grab those points. And I got to look at that 12-3 against the spread last 15, and that's put me over the edge to be on the Tar Heels. And like the other side, maybe we save the vig and we just do a little gentleman's. I owe everyone else in town a dinner. may as well give the Purple Ace one as well, right? Can I use that as for your nickname from now on?
I've been called worse, I'll tell you that, especially after that Evansville game.
Very good. Well, we're going to go to another high-profile team when we come back here at pregame.tv. We're going to be talking about the Qs. Syracuse playing much better, and will they be able to get it done against UConn? Looks like they're laying 4 in that game. Stay with us here at pregame.tv.